Jacko, I really appreciate you taking the time today to talk to me about your experience with the Tattoo Pathway Fundamentals course.
Problem at all.
Yeah, I ran myself through these questions the other day just to be really curious about how it impacted me. And I was like, wow. So I'm really keen to talk to other people who've done the course and just see how it's landed for them. I've got a few
Yeah.
questions for you. So I know you did the course before when it was the 7 Principles of Tattoo Philosophy. Was that back in 2020?
Yeah, that was 2020.
So about 4 years ago. When you first saw that the course came out, what were you thinking about it?
I was already looking into getting a tattoo with Mark. He told me about this course. There was absolutely no hesitation for me. He said, yep, like jump straight into it. He sort of ran me through what it'd be and what it was going to be, but I had absolutely no idea what to expect. He said this would be beneficial for me before I get a tattoo and go into that space. So
Mhm.
I just jumped straight in without any hesitation whatsoever.
That's so good. And it actually leads me to my next question. What was
Mhm.
going on in your life at that point in time that made you want to start exploring your approach to tattooing differently?
So I was really lucky on how I found Mark. It wasn't just through a search engine or anything. I actually found him through my tattooist at the time. They were
Mm,
mates and they'd done a lot together. Mark had worked in Age's studio and Age himself, my tattooist, before I started getting this stuff done with Mark, he was like well-rounded tattooist, but we were also friends as well. The transition for me to go from just getting tattooed and then to dive deeper into it, I was already on a pretty good path. Most of the time I got tattooed by Age, we were just by ourselves in a studio and we were mates. So it was pretty
mhm.
chill. So a lot of my bigger pieces, I've had a good experience, but I basically, I'll say this story because this is how it started. I didn't know anything about Mark, and I walked in to do a session with Age, my old tattooist, and he had this Mandela on his neck. It was brand new.
Mm.
And I just walked in and just like visually just went, whoa, what is that? Like, where'd you get that from? And he's going, bro, he goes, sit down. He's sit down. I'll talk you through what I went through. And then basically he told me about Mark. He told me about the process and how withdrawn from his body he was and how
Mhm,
much of a different experience it was. And I was just like, I was blown away visually and
mm.
like how the tattoo sat on Age's body, but also by the process. And that's basically how the journey started from there.
Y
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So it sounds like you were already having good experiences, like you said, with your tattoos, but through, like, someone sharing their story, it opened the door to, like, another way of engaging with it more deeply.
Definitely. 100%. Yeah. And it was lucky it was someone I trusted and also who was a tattooist themselves. And they were saying like the experience is completely different to what you've been experiencing with me. And he was humble enough to say
Wow.
that. Mm. But
Just
it still took 2 years, Taylor. It still took 2 years before I actually connected with Mark and all the stars aligned. And then that's when he told me about the fundamentals course. It was 2 years after that where I was booked in to get tattooed from Mark.
That's so interesting that you had that moment of being introduced to the concept of there's
Mm.
more, there can be more to your tattoo experience, and then having that 2-year break before you actually connected into the course. What do you think led to that 2-year break before actually diving in?
I think well, I wasn't ready. I contacted Mark and I was booked in to get tattooed from him. It didn't work because of my work at the time. I couldn't get the time
Mhm.
off that I'd booked in with him and it just didn't align. And he was cool, but this was all via email. And then I contacted him 2 years later and he'd started this course. So I think it was all just meant to be. It just fell into place perfectly because after doing this course and then the experience I had when I just had my first session with Mark getting intentionally tattooed, it changed my life. Like it was mind altering. Like it was insane. It was awesome.
I'm just curious because you've done it before. We've obviously relaunched the course again this year, like repackaged it as the fundamentals and really pulled out those primary principles. What motivated you to do the course again this time round?
I think for one, straight up, because I got so much out of the first course,
Yeah,
it just it's a no brainer. Like yeah, the course was there again. It had been revamped. It had been stripped back, and yeah, I got so much out of the first course. And because I've been now tattooed a fair few times, like intentionally, I just coming in it with a a different vibe, a different view, a different viewpoint, like a totally different perspective, you know, which I found exciting, but also too the fact that Mark, yourself, and Jarish had revisited the course
mm,
and stripped it back. So it's pretty much it was like going into it again, really.
yeah,
Yeah, brand new course. And yeah, I just think because I was looking at it totally different because I'd done the course before, I got
yeah,
so much more out of it because I was able to dive deeper again. Once you, yeah, go through the course and then go through and get marked on the skin in that way, it's totally changed. Like you're totally different.
I can really relate to your experience because I similarly did the course back in 2020, and that was the first time I did it. Coming back and reviewing it and being part of that process of editing it, sure, I was doing that, but in theory, I was also still going through the course again this
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
round. And like that point you talk about, it's like, the first stage is learning it and kind of like taking it on in your mind and understanding it. And then you go and apply it to your life through receiving markings and moving through life intentionally. And what you learn takes on a new meaning almost because you're applying it. And I just relate to coming back to it and being able to receive more as well. So it's really cool hearing that's how you've been able to engage with it. I guess getting into some of the detail, what has been the biggest change that you've experienced from participating in the course?
Um, there's a lot.
That's
Um,
a big question, hey?
yeah. I firstly, I would say looking at yourself through all of it, that would be the biggest thing. Looking at myself and
Mm,
asking why and giving that space, time, and giving it everything that it needs. And just basically getting in tune with the body and yeah, just sort of
yeah.
feeling it as well. Feeling it because it becomes pretty organic. Yeah. And it's such a powerful
Mhm.
thing. The first thing would definitely be me diving into myself and all that. And then the second would be finding something else. And basically, I was chasing it my whole life, but it was through tattoo. So I was always drawn to tattoos in some way or another. The stuff in the course and that really answered a lot of questions that I had unanswered in my own head. Yeah, it really ironed it out for me and really sort of made sense. And it definitely it showed me why I was here doing this course and going through this process.
Yeah, it's so powerful hearing that. And I guess a question is when you talk about this, looking at yourself and connecting to something, what was the word you used? Like finding something else. Do you feel like tattoo was the entry point, but it was kind of rippling into your life more generally? Is that what you mean by that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yep. Massive. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It was a huge, huge part. Yeah. And especially too, I was lucky enough because I did the course, but I was opening the heart space. So that's where I was getting tattooed. It was a pretty big area. And it was just great to have that course there to set me up to be ready. So when I went up with Mark and we went through all of it, I was like, I was clear, I was intentional, and I was there for that day. I wasn't displaced at all. I was there ready to show up.
It sounds like doing the course beforehand helped or supported you to receive and engage with your actual tattoo in that point in time in a
Yeah.
specific way or in a
Yeah.
different way.
Definitely, 100%. The course really helped me because what I learned and everything that I went through when I was there and I turned up, I was completely there and just ready. It was great. It was so good. Like for such a
Yeah.
first experience,
I love
yeah, for such a first experience, yeah, the course just set me up perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love hearing that because I feel that so deeply as well. Could you share any differences in how you approached tattooing before doing the course and after?
Totally different. So Age, who I mentioned before, who I found marks through, they were great. Every single tattoo I got off him was a good experience. But I would say the difference I had is just you're not coming into it like you're not as in tune with your body and your feelings and just that deeper source. Yeah, so you're still there and you're still intentional and you're marking the skin and opening the skin and going through the process, but you're not really, it's meditative. It's meditative. So when you're doing the intentional stuff, it's a totally different vibe. And I probably can't articulate it good enough in words myself, but I can definitely talk through a couple of tattoos that I got previously before I got tattooed by Age. And yeah, like no no engagement with the artist whatsoever. I'm a talker. I like to talk, and some of the tattoos I got, even we just there was no talk. It was just banging it out, just get in and out. See you later. And it's funny because one of those markings in particular at the time that was very rushed, not thought through, and that's one of the regrets. That's one of the markings that I regret and I've worked through. But it's just funny because of it shows through the course. You learn this in the course when you're not there and when the space isn't there. So the space isn't held for you or the process. The marking then holds that. And when you tap into your body and you look at it and you go through the teachings and all that of the course, it tells you why. Yeah, it tells you why. Yeah, it's classic.
I think you articulated that really well. Sometimes with experiences like this, it is really hard to capture in words because it's beyond that. It's like the experiential side of things. We both have mentioned how the course has like we've revamped it a little bit. How have you found the course content this time round?
Just a hell of a lot easier to navigate through and to use. Last time was really good, but it was a lot of information fast, like really fast, which was good because obviously I was there, so I've got a lot out of it. But I've found now that with the journal as well, with the new course, it's just so easy to use. It's just so much easier to navigate, and it's just more stripped back. So it's just got more of a flow. I've just found it a lot easier to really just sit back and absorb what you've just read or listened to and then come back to it.
I can really relate to that. There was a lot of information to take on quite quickly, and it was like hard to integrate all of it. Whereas I think this time we've stripped back but gone deeper into the
Definitely.
concepts that are still there. If you were to recommend this course to a friend, what would you say to them?
First, I'd probably prompt them because, like, I'm quite close with all my mates and we're pretty deep. We talk about deep stuff. So I'd probably prompt them with a question first and go, what is your relationship with your marking on your body,
Mm,
with your tattoos on your body? And then go from that. And then I'll basically tell them, I've just done a course where you can really strip those markings back and have a look at them and see where you're at in your life, why, the meanings, and so much
Mm.
more. And it's also learning about your tattoos, but
Yeah,
learning about yourself. And that's probably how I'd come at it if I was to ask someone if they were interested in the course. Yeah. What is your relationship with the markings on your body?
that's so powerful. I actually wrote that down, and I guess I hadn't thought of entering that conversation with a question, but I feel like that is so potent. Like, that's such a potent way of starting that conversation.
It takes a lot of the weight off you too, because then you can see where they're at as well, like where they are at, if they're willing to answer it or they're just not willing to engage at all, which is fine.
Yeah, it's a really good way of putting it. Is there anything with your experience and the course you want to add?
We could be here for a long time, Taylor. Everything that I've learned in the course and that I've gone through with the sessions that I've had, intentionally marking my skin has changed and impacted my life in such a way that I can't explain. This process now is now fully integrated into my life to the point still to this day, since my first intentional marking, I've been on the path and got marked every year since because I get so much out of it personally. Yeah, it calls me basically every year and to just go through that process again and experience the stuff that happens during that time. And it's not just when you're actually getting the tattoo, it's beforehand. And that's what the course covers: the before, the after, and the during. And it's just basically when you're doing the course and you've already been intentionally tattooed, you're basically just going through it again. Like, you're going through the process when you're doing the course. I've found something that is really beneficial for my life, and
Yeah.
I just get a lot out of the experience. It's just completely changed my life and how I look at myself, how I look at everything, my scope on my life and my journey now. Yeah, and tattoo, marking the skin is a big part of it now. And through doing it intentionally,
Yeah.
doing the course and all that, it's just all part of the journey for me. Also, the intentional, from my experience so far, in getting intentionally tattooed is a lot more personal too. It's completely about you, the person who's marking your skin at the time, and you're in that container. And that for me is just an experience in itself because there's just so much more engagement. And like I briefly said before about
Yeah.
when I got marked ages ago and there was no engagement, I didn't get a lot out of that process. Whereas, yeah, now doing the course and getting intentionally tattooed, there's more engagement. There's more engagement. You get so much more joy and good stuff out of it.
And that's like the other thing I feel, when I reflect on my own experience with tattoos and what I witness currently in the kind of Western tattoo culture is that we don't have guidance on these things. Like, we don't have guidance on all the different areas of experience within tattooing, as you mentioned before, during, after, but also the impact of the relationship with the artist and how that can impact, like, how that information lasts for times to come. And so I think I found great, and what I'm hearing from what you're sharing is like the course can guide you through that as well. It's
Yeah.
got these like practical information, I guess, to like to provide that guidance
Mm.
and to just give you like a bit of a heads up of how that could impact your experience now and in the future.
Definitely. 100%. Yeah. It's so personal. You feel like it's just 101 the whole time. Even when you're doing the course and then you share in the course and all that, it's just so personal. It's so much
Mm,
more of a personal experience. And yeah, you just get so much more out of it. Yeah, it's awesome. awesome.
Yeah. So good.
Mhm.
Thank you so much, Jacko.
Yeah, no worries. Thank you, Taylor.